Hey all, welcome back to the channel, welcome to Monday, and welcome to Countdown Day. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 biggest backpacks of all Transformers. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, light them up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, and all of my social media links. All of that down in the description below, baby. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course hit the join button right here on YouTube. Become a channel member. And this is going to be the top 10 biggest backpacks in kind of all of Transformers as voted on by fans all across social media. Man, last week's was a wild countdown when we talked about the top 10 most useless accessories, and I had like 2 people who came back and like vehemently defended and said they're all useful. They're not all useful. And then a couple of things that appeared on it, notably Blur's Welder and Cups and like Energon Goody juice box thing. A couple of people really got bent into shape and said, they're so important to the movie. How can you not remember those scenes? Dude, last time I saw that film was in 2016 in theater with my wife and my buddy. I've seen it like 100 times, but if I haven't seen it in 5 or 6 years, I don't remember the scenes. I would ask, why do you? I mean, I applaud you if you have that kind of memory on you. I don't. To me, for something to be an iconic scene, to be that important, then it will stick with me. They don't. So they're not that iconic, honestly. Some people agreed with the list. Some people didn't agree with the list. I personally kind of did. There's a lot of accessories that come with a lot of things, though, that I think should have been on the list other than what we got. But you know what? It was what it was, and that's the way the votes panned out. Just like the votes are going to pan out a certain way here today. It's going to be interesting to see how people interpreted the idea of biggest backpack. In some cases it was justified, in other cases it was seen as egregious, and in some cases they literally looked at the size of the character. Keep that in mind as we go forward. But of course, before we do anything, you know what we're going to do? We're going to kick things off with the honorable mentions. And in the honorable mentions we have the Age of Extinction Leader Class Optimus Prime. Specifically, a lot of people point to that first edition. Yeah, absolutely. There's a big frame behind it. There's a huge backpack on that guy. Universe Silverbolt was another one that was in the honorable mentions. Dark of the Moon Voyager Sentinel Prime. Oh boy, yeah, there's a gigantic backpack. If you don't know it, it's worth your while to look up the original Dark of the Moon Voyager Sentinel Prime and look at that backpack. Cybertron Optimus Prime, Kingdom Beast Wars Megatron, and interestingly, one that we don't have a plastic representation of, but Day Trader, who I believe was in The Last Night, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, all of them, totally big backpacks. None of them made the list. Who did? Well, we're going to kick things off with number 10 first. Well, number 10 takes us to a planetary scope with none other than Cybertron itself, Primus. Cybertron Primus, whatever version of this mold you want to talk about, when you transform it, like at least half the planet is on his back and the other half is kind of on his legs and the rest of him sort of unfurls, really. Undoubtedly one of the biggest backpacks there is. It's surprising that he works as well as he does considering he has half a planet lodged on his back. Enough people remember Primus with half a planet as his back that he was able to score enough votes to come in at the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9 might be the most criminal character on the list, because the voters for this character said, hey, the backpack didn't need to exist at all. The only reason it did in plastic form is because of a gimmick. I'm talking about Beast Wars Depthcharge. Oh yeah, there's a huge backpack. It exists really because of the chest gimmick. They definitely could have compressed that more if not for the gimmick. I get it. I agree. Honestly, I kind of feel like maybe there was a way to do the backpack for Rampage better as well. Spoiler, Rampage isn't on the list, but I totally think he should have been if this guy was. I kind of feel like both of them probably should have come in at the number 9 slot together, but they didn't. Such is life. Votes are what they are. And Depthcharge scored enough that he was easily able to take the number 9 slot. Number 8 to me was a little bit of a surprise, and then when I kind of looked at the character, I said, you know what? It shouldn't be a surprise. It makes perfect sense. Who is it? None other than Siege Megatron. And I mean, he has all of this on his back. You know, it's the front end of his tank and the front treads. Yeah, I get it. Now, I kind of give it a bit of a pass for this guy because the robot mode silhouette is quintessentially Megatron, and because of that, I understand why we have the backpack. It's too bad that there wasn't a better way to handle like this tank mode, and it does make him a bit back heavy, and on my copy, he's always been a little difficult to get to stay stood, specifically because he's back heavy. It's there, it exists, it's big, it stands out, it's noticeable, and it took the number 8 slot. Now, coming in at number 7, you can call it a little bit of a cop-out, if you will, but it got specifically different votes. I'm talking about Earthrise Megatron. This specifically is the G2 version. And again, really for the same reason as Siege. What I found interesting was that the people who voted for Siege specifically seemed to find the Siege to be egregious, and the people who voted for the Earthrise specifically seemed to find the Earthrise egregious. And when I would kind of, like, pick their brain, most of them, some said both, but most of them really felt like it stood out more on the Earthrise, or really felt like it stood out more on the Siege. By the way, you might notice this piece back here. This can fold up over to give him his shoulder cannon. There's a couple of different sort of things out there. This is just a very simple piece and uses the parts he came with, and it does allow it to go down on his back, which I kind of dig. Of course, that does mean it makes his backpack even bigger. Yeah, I like this. I like the Siege, but I totally understand where people are coming from when they talk about the big old backpacks that are really the front of a tank. Enough people felt like these backpacks were egregious that whereas the Siege garnered enough votes to take the number 8 slot, the Earthrise garnered enough votes to take the number 7 slot. Coming in at number 6 is our first fembot on the list, that being Siege Chromia, and I get it. Look, she has big leg pack because she has a bunch of junk on her legs, but like her backpack, like her body is kind of slender, but look at all this junk on her back. Of course, it's the front of the vehicle, it's her front tires. I mean, there's a lot back there, man. There really, really is. Now, I mean, you could sort of open these out to the side, but there's not really much. I guess you could sort of bring that down, kind of, to sort of spread her backpack out. But the chunks on her leg make it almost impossible to sort of do anything with this backpack other than have it left there on her back. I don't like this robot. I don't like this Chromia. I don't think it was successful. A couple of people gave a nod to the Thrilling 30 version and said that still had a pretty big backpack as well. It'd be nice to get a Chromia that was like a clean, well-done robot and a clean, well-done alt mode. Will we get it one day? Who knows? But the Siege Chromia was able to score enough votes that she was easily able to take the number 6 slot. And of course, now a hush falls over the crowd because we're at that most coveted of spots, the halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we have one of the best known examples of an egregious backpack on a mold that a lot of people really don't like. Though, to be fair, I kind of like it. I've never had an issue with it. Not to the degree that other people have. And I kind of like that the backpack itself can sort of be manipulated somewhat to give us slightly different looks. I'm talking about Power of the Prime's Moonracer. She got the most votes. She was the first one to use this mold, and we tend to call it the Moonracer mold. But the same criticisms could apply to Lancer. They could apply to Nova Star or Firestar, if you will, and Greenlight, which essentially is the same mold. Now, again, you could bring these pieces out to the side a little bit. You could flip this down and bring these back. You could bring these out to the side and flip this down. But even if you do all of that to sort of mitigate the backpack a little bit, you still have the combiner peg and all of this junk back here. Like, I'm holding her up just by her backpack. It's much like Chromia. It is there and it is big, and unless you balance her feet just right, it really does kind of stand out in, and I don't have her waist turned around right there. It really does sort of stand out and get in the way, and that's unfortunate. Do I think that they could have handled this better? Yeah, probably. But I even think that had you removed the combiner peg and kind of all of the paraphernalia that's needed there, you still would have ended up with a big backpack. The proof is in the pudding when we look at Siege Chromia, who is a similar mold. I think that they failed to deal with the backpack successfully there, and I think they probably failed to deal with the backpack successfully here as well. Anyway you cut it, enough people thought that her backpack was large enough that she was able to take the number 5 slot. Now for number 4, I actually don't have the character, never did. Don't know a whole lot about the character, to be honest with you, but it is this one. Yeah, it's Cybertron Thunderblast. I mean, there's nothing to say except it is a robot with a boat on its back. I mean, she has a boat on her back. A whole boat. That's it. It makes total sense. You don't get much bigger of a backpack than an entire boat on your back. And enough people felt the same way that she easily took the number 4 slot. Coming in at number 3 is a character who not only has a huge backpack, but it is a distinguishing feature of his character. I'm talking about animated Wreck-Gar. Most times, if people saw a backpack like this, they would say that is the laziest of engineering, and I would tend to agree. In this case, it is considered a feature of the character because he has junk and stuff in his backpack that he's always pulling out. It's strange how forgiving people are when it's deemed to be a feature, and how unforgiving they are when it's deemed to be poor engineering. Maybe if the fiction creators were smarter, they would incorporate some of these backpacks as actual features to make them more forgivable. Just a little food for thought. Anyway you cut it, whether you agree with it or not, whether you justify it or not, it is undoubtedly true that Wreck-Gar has a gigantic backpack, and that's why he garnered enough votes to take the number 3 slot. Now number 2 is an example of a character, and I don't have this version of this character, but it's undoubtedly one of, if not the biggest backpack in all of Transformers. Of course, I'm talking about this. Yeah, man, HasLab Unicron. I mean, the people who voted for him were perfectly right. They said, look, he's the biggest Transformer. He has to have the biggest backpack, and he does. Now, I would argue that they should have engineered him such that he didn't have any backpack at all, but that's not what they did, and it is what it is. He has a gigantic one. There is at least half a planet up there. Maybe more. I'm not sure. What's not there is on his legs. It's very much like Primus, to be perfectly honest with you. Was it avoidable? I guess that depends on how you see the planning and the engineering going. But anyway you cut it, yeah, I got to agree that he does definitely have the biggest backpack because he's the biggest Transformer. But surprisingly, he's not number 1. So who is? Well, number 1 is a very interesting case because people who voted for this character said it's a matter of kind of the ratio of body to backpack. Like Unicron's backpack is giant, but those same people that voted for this character said, I wouldn't vote for Unicron because he also has a huge body. I get where they're coming from. They're looking at ratios in terms of biggest backpack. And I don't know if number 1 has the ratio that people claim it to have. I kind of don't think so. Or if number 1 got the votes because it's been a topic of discussion over the last year. And when something's new, it tends to be on the brain a bit more. Number 1 belongs to Earthrise Arcee. And a lot of people said, look, you can literally take off her entire backpack and the whole car is there, the entire thing. There is absolutely zero about the robot that contributes to the car. You could take it all off and boom, you have a whole car. I get it. Because even with Unicron, if you took off his backpack alone, you can't make the whole planet. You'd have to take off the leg packs as well. You'd have to take off the shoulder pieces because of the ring. So I get it. Even things that are more like shell form or round, sometimes you can't take off those pieces, and sometimes even like chunks on the arm or the leg or something form part of the vehicle. In this case, you can conceivably literally remove the whole thing and still get the vehicle and have the robot be completely separate. That is arguably the most egregious backpack that you can possibly have. And enough people thought the same way that she easily took the #1 spot. And man, there we've gone once again from 10 down to 1. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with everything on this particular list. A lot of other characters had votes that I think some of them probably should have deserved more, like Rampage, Beast Wars Rampage. He got a vote. Arachnid, because she has virtually most of the helicopter on her back. Thrilling 30's Jetfire. Thrilling 30's Sandstorm. He has a big backpack for sure. Who else did we have here? The original Optimal Optimus, the Power of the Primes, Optimal Optimus. Slag had some votes. Classics Bumblebee and Cliffjumper had some votes. Who else here? As I'm going down, G1 Ape Face had some votes. He definitely had a big backpack. Reveal the Shield Tracks. Energon Bulkhead, that was a good one. Cybertron Wing Saber had some votes. MP51, MP44 because of a voice box apparently. Power of the Primes Rodimus Prime, apparently he got some votes for having a big backpack. And just to throw one more in there, let's say Age of Extinction Galvatron. Although I do like the fact that that truck cab really kind of flattened out on his back. There were a lot of backpacks. There were a lot that honestly I think could have made the list. I think that the list was heavily influenced by Arcee coming out in both Earthrise and Kingdom. And a lot of people not agreeing with her backpack. The Paradron Medic, Lifeline, she had a couple of votes as well. I really think the #1 should have gone to HasLab Unicron because of the logic of it. Biggest Transformer, he is a shell former with a huge backpack. Biggest backpack, just per capita. But I understand the arguments that were made for the other ones as well. Let me know if your favorites for biggest backpack made the list or not, or who else you would have liked to have seen go on there. I've said a bunch, and I think there's a lot more even than the ones I've said. I appreciate you coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon, see what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course hit the join button right here on YouTube. To become a channel member, while you're at it, hit the subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us. Don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day you do make a difference, and I look forward, baby, to the next time and that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.